So next up, I have the pleasure of introducing Cindy-Lee Cloete from South Africa. Cindy is the General Manager of the Schools and Youth Unit at WESSA, which stands for Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa. And she coordinates the Eco Schools, Learning About Forests and Young Reporters for the Environment programs in South Africa. So the floor is yours, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and greetings from South Africa. What a privilege it is to be here at the launch of the Earth Action Hub, and also to be in this amazing group of people with their powerful messages. And I hope that I can contribute to that. But before I do that, I just want to highlight that this week is a very important one for us. We just had the UNESCO ESD for 2030 conference this past week, where the Berlin Declaration was adopted. Personally, here in South Africa, I've seen 3 events locally hosted, basically looking at ESD and how we as a country need to embrace that. It was World Outdoor Classroom Day yesterday, and I think tomorrow is World Biodiversity Day. And today we have a group of young like-minded people launching Earth Action Hub that will basically serve as an inspiration and support for continued environmental action across the world. So a pretty big week for all of us. And I would like to situate that in this very important week in the context of a very important year for us. This year represents the start of the last decade until we get to 2030, and meeting all of our targets and all of our commitments that we've basically said we would. So I guess that every single week this year needs to become a very important one for all of us. And this is why the Earth Action Hub is such an important tool, a tool for knowledge, for support, a tool for global solidarity in our collaborative actions as youth. Yesterday, I realized again the power that we as the youth have. On my way to a launch of an outdoor classroom at one of our schools in Johannesburg, one of our eco schools in Johannesburg, I was listening to the radio, and the host invites South Africans across the country every Thursday to take part in a segment called Across the Desk. Yesterday, he had 2 children on this particular show, aged 11 and 15, and he just had a conversation with them. These 2 children had the entire country, well, all of us that were listening, eating out of their hands and hanging on to every word that they said. That is the power of the youth. And I'm so glad that I experienced that again yesterday. So if you ever wonder if you have any power as a young person, or whenever you feel hopeless, just remember those 2 young children from South Africa and take inspiration from them. As we launch the Earth Action Hub today, remember that the climate emergency is not static, and its impact constantly shifts. Therefore, we need to be agile and flexible in our thinking and in our actions. In other words, our education cannot be static, and we need to embark on a journey of lifelong learning where we use our head, our hands, and our heart, and make sure that those are always evolving and growing. The head, where we form our information and our education, so the knowledge part of things. Our hands, the skills that we gain through the education that we get, that then in turn turns into action. And lastly, our hearts, that represents our attitudes and how those attitudes change through our education and through our actions. It's the connection that we have with our earth as well as with each other. So in saying that, it's important that we leave nobody behind. We all know this. But what does it mean for us as we start engaging on the Earth Action Hub? I have a niece that's 12 years old, and I don't get to see her very often, maybe 3 times a year. So whenever I do get to see her, I try and give her as much as information so that she's empowered to shape her understanding of the world. When she was younger, I remember she often asked me, "So why didn't you say that in the first place?" And that would be in response to me explaining something to her for the second time. Now that she's a little bit older, she tells me at the beginning of our engagements, "If you have to explain something to me twice, you've already lost me." So I use that as a guide of leaving no one behind. And it's important that we create access to information, even in our training, and basically look at leaving no one behind. So when we engage on the Earth Action Hub, let's remember that. How we interact, how we make information available to people, that should be at the core of our foundation. Our indigenous knowledge systems and our intergenerational learning and sharing of practices, the things that make us who we are, those are important in our journey to sustainable solutions to climate change. I learned that in leaving no one behind, it is less about me coming to help or to save someone, but rather about us working together to collectively help ourselves and the planet. Everybody's handprints and fingerprints need to be on our collective solutions. Because when it comes from the inside out, it's more powerful than when it comes from the outside in. And that's something that we need to remember. Lastly, there's a phrase in the preamble of the South African Constitution that I want to share with us as we launch this important online space. It says, united in our diversity. And still today, us as South Africans get it wrong sometime. But in the context of this launch today, I'm raising this because sometimes it will feel overwhelming and we'll get anxious about the enormity of climate change and its impacts. And in these feelings, you know, they might enable inability and keep us on the sidelines. But I believe in the power of youth united in diversity. It'll be important for us to support each other in as many ways as we can, and to never be afraid to ask for help. President Obama received advice from a journalist called Thomas Friedman that I would like to leave you with. He said, "You can't be too honest in describing big problems, too bold in offering big solutions, too humble in dealing with missteps, too forward in telling your own story, or too gutsy in speaking the previously unspeakable." So let us at the Earth Action Hub start building a society we want to work towards a sustainable planet we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. I couldn't agree more. The youth is power, united with all the other generation. And here we have a young person who I feel is one of the most powerful I met in the last year.